Nana, today you're the Chief Procurement Officer at onsemi and recently became the Vice President of External Manufacturing as well. Your work is based here in San Jose, but your background is quite varied. You were born in Taiwan, raised in Saudi Arabia, educated in the US, and your early work even took you to Southeast Asia. What was it like to begin your career and continue it in such a unique way?
Definitely the international experience, and having grown up in Saudi Arabia and basically did my education in California, really gave me a very broad and diverse view of the culture and the world, right? I think today with my job, right, I travel a whole lot, and I have to thank my experience as growing up through the different cultures and working with different languages really helped me to understand the nuances, right? When you go to business meetings, culturally there's always a difference in how you conduct and your body language. And I think that definitely has helped me to be very sensitive to that and to be very observant of that. Yeah.
And now your undergraduate degree is in business administration, and you earned a master's in finance and strategic management from MIT. What drew you to study business and strategy in the first place?
Business, because I think I like to make money. and I think I just like to see results, right? And then maybe money, if you consider that as a measurable, very measurable result. I think that's what attracted me to business, because first of all, you can actually see the fruit of what you put together, right? So that's why I like business. I think strategy, definitely, when I was at MIT Sloan School, I really enjoyed a lot of the case studies that were provided. And it really, for me, it's really about problem solving. And I really enjoy that aspect.
Got it. And you earned your undergraduate degree at Berkeley, your master's at MIT, two very technical environments. And your career you've spent in the semiconductor industry. Would you say that your experience in your academic career kind of shaped your career afterwards?
I think it definitely has an influence, although it's not a conscious decision to say, hey, I have a technical, kind of more technical training and then move into semiconductors. I think it's more of really identifying what I'm good at. So I think I chose finance initially because, as most Asians, we're good at math, and you figure, hey, I want to do business. What aspect of business has a lot of math or numbers, right? Finance. But in the end, I actually did not stay in finance career, as you can see, right? Because I actually really enjoy the people aspect of it. I really enjoy working with people and making deals happen and facilitating win-win solutions and business opportunities. So that part I really find very rewarding. So today I'm in this position, which, I definitely work with a lot of suppliers, right? Enabling our supply chain and enabling our sourcing strategy that will really facilitate, and basically ensure onsemi has all the proper cost structure to be successful in our industry.
Got it. And now, looking back on your career history, you've been the CPO at onsemi for a little over 3 years now, but before that you spent about 19 years at Advanced Semiconductor Engineering, or ASE. What was it about the environment at ASE that made you want to stay? And do you carry any lessons from your time there that influence you today?
Yeah, so I started ASE, and ASE was my first entry into the semiconductor industry. And I started because it has a very nice family environment. It's a relatively small office here in the United States, even though it's headquartered in Taiwan. It's a huge company, but it's a very small office, and I like that family environment. And not only that, 19 years, or now it's 22, 23 years ago now when I started, it was I would say a number 3 or number 4 in the industry in the back-end assembly and test for semiconductor. And during the earlier years, right, as a head of sales there, I really helped to bring the company to be the number one in this industry. And I really enjoy that part of that journey, right? Where you're growing the company, you're growing with the company, and you're winning. So that's really what kept me there for so long, because it is a journey, right? And it takes time, and you build a team who helped you and enabled you, and of course with the proper leadership. And we were there at the right place at the right time. We have the right solutions. So it's a great feeling. Now, in terms of lessons, right? I think definitely what I learned about myself during this 19 years is that I do enjoy working in a growth environment. And that's part of the reason I left ASE and joined onsemi, is I like to be in action. I like to help a company grow. And ASE has achieved that number one status. I would say it is kind of more, in my definition, more of a maintenance mode, right? Defensive mode. onsemi, on the other hand, although it's a 20-some-year-old company, it was going through a major transformation 2-3 years ago, when we had a new CEO and a whole new leadership in place. And that really attracted me to join that team, is to help to transform onsemi. Yeah.
And when you made that move, you were moving not only to a new company, a new environment, but you were actually making a move into the C-suite for the first time as well. What was that transition like?
Oh, it's a very challenging transition, because it's when I was at ASE sales, it's functionally you just have to focus on getting that PO, that order, right? But in procurement, it's a very operational position, actually. So you have to make sure everything, the execution of the sourcing is executed, right? So there's a lot more details involved. But specifically in terms of being in the C-suite, I think that definitely the expectation, the impact, and the influence is very different, right? Your audience, your stakeholders, and how you have to connect more dots, right, to make things happen, is definitely a lot more challenging and a great learning experience. Yeah.
Now, you began that transition during a very unique time for the semiconductor industry. It was during COVID. So working in that industry, and specifically working in procurement, what unique challenges did you experience during that time?
I think that was a very well-known challenge for a lot of companies at the time, is the supply chain constraint, or supply chain disruption, right? Not only with the COVID, but also the geopolitical, all the disruptions that were going on. So definitely I dived right into it, right? And a lot of people, my friends, kind of was really curious why I would leave a sales job, which at that time was a sales side, and the sale is a sell market, it's a seller's market, to a buyer's market where you definitely are facing a lot of constraint. So they all wonder why I make that move. But it's like I said, I like a good challenge. Yeah. So
in terms of that challenge, are there any strategies that you used, either in terms of managing your personal life in balance with your working life, or even within your working life, to overcome those?
Well, within the first week I joined the company, I basically kicked off what I call FAST, FAST. Focus, agility, simplification, and transparency. I think those 4 key themes will really drive or enable our supply chain procurement team to navigate through this supply disruption time, right? You have to be able to move fast. You have to be agile, so be able to pivot very quickly. If this path doesn't work, this supplier, you come to a roadblock, how can you transition quickly, right? And of course, simplification. When your supply chain is too complicated, and during this time of disruption, you're just making your life very, very difficult. So we took the time also, or the opportunity, to simplify our supply chain, to simplify our processes, so we can also move faster and more nimble. And finally, transparency, right? Being able to communicate more regularly and more transparently with your supply chain and your suppliers and their suppliers, so that they can understand what your needs are, will cut through a lot of the noise. So, and ultimately, at the end of the day, I think relationship matters.
And now moving on to some achievements of yours. Last year, you were also named one of Procurement magazine's top 100 women in procurement. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Especially after going through such a challenge. When you first joined onsemi, how did it feel to be recognized for your achievements?
Oh, I'm definitely very humbled and honored. I think it's a great. I stand in the shoulders of giants, right? And I really believe that I was very appreciative of the platform that was provided to me by our leadership at onsemi. There was a lot of trust in what I do, and it gave me a lot of room to perform.
Now, as an executive, a C-suite executive, you're expected to not only strategize, but to serve as a leader within your organization. How would you describe your leadership style?
So I guess there are some leaders that I think people would imagine to be in a nice big office, sitting in front of the computer, looking at reports and remote controlling. I'm not that type. Okay, I'm an action type. I like to be part of the action. So I lead by example. I communicate my expectations very clearly. I think it's very important that when you lead a team, they know where they're heading towards and why. I definitely wanted to make sure everybody can play their strength. So understanding your team and what their strengths are is very important. And you basically try to bring the most out of them in this process. Yeah.
A core mission of Oceanside Perspective is to share perspectives across generations. As a leader at onsemi, how do you empower intergenerational teams to learn from each other?
Actually, when I joined, so my team actually has a spectrum of the gens, from the Gen X to the Gen Zs and the millennials. I have every generation except for Gen Alpha. I was looking that up last night. Gen Alpha, that will be my kid, right? So it's actually a great combination. I think if I have a team that are all 20-some-year-old, I think it will be very difficult for this industry. You need people with experience, and that's where people in their 40s and 50s really bring to the table, is that experience. However, the younger generation, right, they have a different view of the world. They're definitely more risk-taking. And I think it's a great balance, because I like the younger team to challenge the older team and ask them the question, why we have to do things this way. Because you'll be surprised, sometimes people don't know why. Why are we doing this way? And they don't know the answer, because that's how we've been doing it.
Right, they've never been challenged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you have a young college grad or a master's degree or a few years into the workforce come in and say, well, in this industry, we don't do it this way, then you kind of go, right. Semiconductor is a relatively, I wouldn't say it's an old industry, but it's a mature industry. So it's good to have that balance. And I think that's where I would say to empower people. So first of all, to allow them the platform to speak up, right? And to stimulate that why, right? And ask ourselves why. And with the proper experience, at least you know that you won't be taking too much risk in terms of going outside of the governance, right? Because procurement is a lot about compliance and governance. So people with experience make sure we stay within the proper constraint, but at the same time, asking ourselves, is there a better way of doing things?
Do you have any examples of a situation where maybe you were challenged or pushed a little bit by somebody with a different perspective, or perhaps somebody belonging to a different generation that perhaps changed your mind on something or changed how you do something?
Yeah, so for example, the typical process for procure to, so from starting a purchase requisition to issuing a PO is that somebody would raise a PR and then somebody would approve the PO. Typically procurement would approve the PO and the user, whoever needed that product, would raise the PR. And the process would be that PR would be approved, let's say, my boss.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the more younger team member asked me once, like, so if our boss already approved the PR, why do you have to approve the PO again?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it's like almost like a redundancy that we see. If my boss already approved the PR, that means it's good to go. We don't need to reapprove things.
Mm-hmm.
So that would definitely cut a lot of the time, right, and the process. So that's just an example.
All right, thank you for that.
Yeah.
You'll be joining Oceanside Perspective's board of directors. You'll be playing a significant role in helping shape the direction of the organization.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to make this commitment to OP?
I think very simply, Helen. I think she's a very inspiring leader, and I've watched her journey. I think it's very inspiring and very exciting, and I just want to be part of that journey. Mm-hmm. And I think the cause and the proposition is very appealing as well. You know, that you know, I think it's a great way to kind of voice. It's really a platform. Mm-hmm. To allow people to voice and share all these L.I.T.E. Leadership, innovation, technology, entrepreneurship topics, mm-hmm. right? So the topic's also very relevant.
And now you mentioned Oceanside Perspective's core goals, core tenets, mm-hmm. L.I.T.E. Which of these four resonates most strongly with you, and what is an example of how it's come up in your life?
So leadership, I think we spoke quite extensively earlier, so I won't repeat, and entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. I think there's always a part of me that aspires to be an entrepreneur, mm-hmm. and even though, and business is the closest I get to it, although I've never really started a company or ran a business myself. So that's what I mean when I say aspiring to be. So those two.
And what is your long-term vision for OP? What direction would you like to see the organization follow based on what you've seen and what you know?
I think that definitely, I think it's a great platform and a community that builds a cross-generational community. Mm-hmm. And what I like to see is what I kind of said earlier is being able to allow the freedom of voice, right? Or people to be able to express, right, and share information. I think, and from multi-generation, right? So whether you are the Gen X or you are the Millennial or the Gen Zs, you can come together and collaborate or share information or help each other, mm-hmm. right? Because there's also a lot we can learn from the younger generation, right? And so I think is a great tool.
And lastly, what advice do you have for any aspiring leaders or innovators and entrepreneurs who might be facing adversity early on in their careers?
I think adversity is a relative term, right? And so I would say, you know, you just have to understand it's a relative thing, mm-hmm. And it's always a great way to build character and resilience. I think, and it's, you can see a lot of successful people, right? They've all gone through, and the most successful ones are usually the ones that have gone through major adversity or challenge or failure, and so I think it's actually common. So I would say for those who are going through it now, just think of it as something that, first of all, that it's an opportunity to learn a good lesson, mm-hmm. which, you know, it's better to learn now than later, right? Because sometimes if you learn later in life, the impact is actually greater.
All right. Well, thank you again. We're joined today by Nana Tseng, the Chief Procurement Officer at onsemi and the Vice President of External Manufacturing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.